Okay, we may have waited too long to start the SPOM. Surely there's going to be a dupe that's about to suffocate. Welcome back to Echo Ridge and another episode in our Try Hard achievement run. Today we have a couple of objectives. We need to start incubating the eggs and getting a system going to where we can run a lot of incubators on an absolutely horrible power situation. We'll probably also be expanding Susan's stable here just to make room for more critters as they come. I'd also like to get some bathrooms done. Eric, why are you sleeping in the bathroom? But most importantly, it's about time we turn our attention to oxygen. We have a little bit of oxalite down here, but let's be honest, this is not going to last very long. Lucky for us, I think we have most of the research we need. I'm sure we're going to find some onesies and twosies that we'll need as we're constructing our basic SPOM setup, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Now we have a couple of options for location. First, I was thinking about here. It's nice and chill. We could add a bunch of background here, put the SPOM here, and then have the pipes go through the chilly part to make sure the oxygen doesn't get too hot. This would also help making sure the equipment sitting here wouldn't get too hot as well. But then I realized we also have down here. Now the temperatures down here get really cold, which means the SPOM down here would last a lot longer. Or more precisely, the equipment would last a lot longer down here before it started overheating. The primary concern is just making it to cycle 100. And then we can slow down and put in a lot more permanent systems. So I think step one is going to be finishing up the incubator. We're still waiting for a little bit more refined metal. That way we can get the eggs going as quickly as possible. And then step two, we're going to start building that SPOM. We're also going to have to keep an eye on calories. We're going to be in this weird death spiral situation, and it happens anytime you put a microbe musher on. The microbe musher requires so much duplicate labor that you actually go backwards. So we may look to add duplicate number 6 and possibly number 7, but I'm going to have to play that by feel. Looks like we might have an update on the colony achievement front as well. Nope, it's the same ones. Apparently I didn't X out the notification. Right now we have bed and bath, it's not raw, and to pay the bills. We finally have enough aluminum to put down the incubator and the timer. Now it's just about waiting for the duplicate labor to free up from the microbe musher to get this built. We put a higher priority on it just because we really do need to get that egg going. Time is of the essence, especially here in the early game, because we've shown how the hatch math sort of compounds, so the more critters we get now will have a major effect on the total amount of critters that we have in 50, 60 cycles. Speaking of which, once we get a few more pieces of research, say like the water sieve, probably the desalinator because I know we have some salt water on this planetoid, possibly the deodorizer, and obviously the rest of them that we need for the SPOM, we're going to go ahead and stop research. Because stopping research will definitely free up some of this labor. And remember, the first 100 cycles, the only thing we're concentrating on is carnivore. Everything else is just a bonus. Our Cycle 9 printing pod brings up a good point. In reviewing the comments from the last episode, there were a few people that were a little disappointed that we weren't able to stick to the no care packages rule of the run. I'm going to try not to grab any of the care packages at least until Cycle 100. After that, it's not a big deal because most every other achievement, it's just a matter of time. Until then, unless we're starving or something else dire, I'm not going to touch the care packages. But if anything changes, I will let you know. As for these 3 dupes, we have somebody who's flatulent. This is a big no-no. The natural gas that they would emit would end up messing all sorts of things up, not to mention the irritation from the dupes. A rocketry building Camille with Luddite? And then a digger doctor with building impaired. We're going to pass on all of these, although this may be a mistake because getting that 6th dupe would be really handy for some of our construction projects. Patrick might be the worst builder ever. And it sort of makes sense. They have a construction of 0. They've been at this for about a half a cycle. And it ended up being break time before they finished. Come on, Patrick! Our wonderful incubator is finally finished, so we can go ahead and throw that hatchling egg in there. We're going to put all the incubators on a 6. As for the timers, this is going to be somewhat of a complicated setup, but we're going to do the 75 and 600 as pretty standard. Now, this is not something abnormal, but when we start getting multiple incubators, I'll show you what we're going to have to do. Because obviously at 240 watts, if every single incubator was to turn on at the same time, we would end up getting some brownouts. Not ideal. A colony achievement just happened, so I'm pretty sure it's going to be the automation one. Red light, green light? There it is. With that egg being incubated, we can now turn our attention to our SPOM. But we will be keeping very close eyes on these eggs as they pop up. Now, we have to keep in mind that Susan is at 31% for their next egg. By the time the next egg comes, we're going to want to have another incubator ready, because this egg will still be using this incubator, which means we're going to need another 250 kilos worth of aluminum. Speaking of which, we're running low on aluminum ore. We're also going to need some aluminum for the SPOM itself. Let's go ahead and queue up a solid 10 of these, but put it at a priority of 5. Looks like there's plenty of aluminum in here. We just got to go and dig it out. I really should have taken that duplicate at cycle 9. Even though they weren't ideal, progress is going very slow. Well, we're also running the game very slow. I've reduced the speeds to where the triple arrow only gives me ×6 speed. The double arrow will still give us ×3 speed, but I haven't been hitting that too much. Tryhard Sweaty Echo doesn't want to miss anything. We have 3 excellent fruits here. We may disable the microbe musher temporarily, just so everybody can concentrate on building the SPOM. We've already lost one of the tiles. We only have 65 kilos here, 130, 144, and 128. There's some other minor little pockets, like we could open this up, but then we'd be off-gassing a bunch of polluted oxygen and the dupes would get the yucky lungs. No, nobody's got time for that. I suppose there'll still be 4 more hexlents over here that we'll be able to get into in case of emergency, but we're going to go ahead and execute that plan now. Sorry, no more mush fry. Now, step 1 in here is going to be preparing the surface. All of this ice and snow has to be covered up. We'll eventually have to move all this ice out of here as well because it would end up melting inside the SPOM. The good news though is we'll be able to drop all that ice into our makeshift water tank, which will provide us a little bit more water going forward. Ooh, looks like we earned another colony achievement. I'm guessing this is the building outside the biome. There it is, outdoor renovations. It's because we built a ladder down here. Another project I'd like to do, but I don't know if we're going to have the duplicate labor for a little while, is moving these manual generators out of this section here. In the comments, people were pointing out that I'm not running a laboratory, and they're absolutely right. But the problem is, laboratories aren't allowed to have any industrial machines, and these wheels are industrial machines. So right now, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze moving the manual generators, but possibly once we get duplicate number 6 and 7, we can free up some of that labor to make that change. That way we get the efficiency bonus for having a laboratory. Working down here is not going to be pleasant. We're already up to 21% stress. Sometimes the ice flashes into a liquid when we put in new equipment, plus the duplicates are getting chilly surroundings. There's also not a lot of oxygen down here. It's just a giant mess. Rounding the corner on cycle 12, we have the basic setup for our SPOM in. We still need to put some insulated tiles up here because we don't want any of that heat escaping up here. In fact, we want more of the temperature to stay in this area. And if we don't insulate this in, that chill will sort of go everywhere and we won't be concentrating our thermal efforts. But standard setup, we have 2 electrolyzers, which would be able to supply enough oxygen for a little over 16 dupes, but we're only going to have 2 gas pumps in it for now, which means we'll be limited to 1 full pipe of oxygen or 10 duplicates. Sulfur just hit another skill point, and this is another thing we're paying really close attention to, because as soon as a duplicate gets their next skill point, we want to give them another skill. For instance, in this case, Sulfur is going to get electrical engineering, but more importantly, they're going to get +2 to machinery. And that additional machinery means that they're going to be able to use things like the rock crusher faster. By stopping use on the microbe musher, we actually have 3 duplicates working on this project at once. I'm probably going to pay for that in a few cycles when our duplicates are starving, but that's a future Echo problem. Cycle 12 printing pod, and the options are not great. Pay's unconstructive, not helpful. Abe is anemic. Sorry, Abe. The best bet is probably going to be this Ari. If this was a normal run, I'd probably not take Ari unless I was really needing a pick him up and set him down dupe. But Ari's not too shabby with a +8 strength and the early bird. So welcome to the colony, duplicate number 6, Lady Ruff. Lady Ruff's obviously going to get the improved carry. They'll probably eventually also be a plumber, or possibly even a mechatronics engineer. But that's not a decision we need to make for a long time. For now, we just need the labor. They're allowed to do anything and everything. They're also going to be the first duplicate on shift number 4. except we're going to be moving ILART as well, because Shift 4 is the first shift that has all 5 work slots for the early bird. Previously, ILART was on Shift 1, and one of them was the bath time. There's also been some suggestions in the comments about getting rid of downtime and reducing the bedtime even further. And the reason why I personally don't do these things is when the downtime hits, it gives them an opportunity to start making their ways towards getting something to eat or using the bathroom or whatever else they need to do. Same thing with the bath time slot. Right now, it's not even a big deal, but eventually we're going to have showers, and this is when they'll do that. You could further tighten these up and get a little bit of time back, but when it comes down to percentages, it may not be worth it. Yeah, you'll be getting maybe 2 to 3% more work out of each dupe, but you're also inviting a lot more problems when it comes to their sleep schedules getting off or them being late to get a meal. With Lady Ruff here, we took advantage of the extra labor and put a couple doors in and removed the manual generators. For that effort, we now have the lab workspace bonus, which gives us a plus 10% speed on the research. Unfortunately, we're starting to run out of oxygen. We're putting in the liquid pump now, finishing up the research on the Atmos sensors, and then we need to research the hydrogen generators, and we'll be ready to fire this thing up. We are cutting it extremely close. There's no more oxalite. In our desperation for oxygen, I was looking around at other pockets, and I realized something. Look at this. This is 14 kilos worth of oxygen in each tile. It is something to do with the mechanics of the oxyfern and the carbon dioxide here. It's just continuously creating more and more oxygen. Sort of like an infinite oxyfern, except it's not using up any of the carbon dioxide. Before that thing gets any worse, we're going to go ahead and break into that. At the minimum, it's going to give us a lot of oxygen that we desperately need right now. Okay, we may have waited too long to start the SPOM. Surely there's going to be a dupe that's about to suffocate. Alright, so the SPOM is working a little bit. I started it up just to try to get a little bit of this carbon dioxide out of here. Not to mention, we don't have the Atmos sensors in yet. Those are going in, but we don't have time for the niceties such as not getting hydrogen in our oxygen mix, that sort of thing. We just need to breathe. The hydrogen generator is going to be sort of on its own. We don't have the time or the luxury to make gas reservoirs and everything like that, so we're going to hook this directly up and just keep repairing it until it's a solid stream of hydrogen. And then I think the last piece of research that we need is the wonderful smart battery. The smart battery will go right here. Until then, it's just connected to our primary power line. We will be able to separate them, and we're going to have to, because eventually we're going to have overflow hydrogen that we'll have to take care of as well. But the important thing is we have oxygen flowing. Everything else is sort of secondary. Oh my gosh, we're down to 6,000 calories. Time to re-enable this guy. I think it's also time to sacrifice a pip. These here are extra pips. Now, we are starting the pip ranching, but we don't have the technology quite yet to be able to get rid of the eggs and make sure this thing's running functionally. So until then, we're just going to kill another pip. Yeah, the hydrogen generator doesn't exactly like getting oxygen and carbon dioxide, but it'll be fine. We'll just keep repairing it. Every once in a while, it gets a little blob of hydrogen. And look at this. Susan's first child is born. The future of this colony rests on the back of Susan. We also have our second egg, and it went into the incubator. Now, unfortunately, we're in one of those weird rock and a hard place situations. We're starting to get a full line of hydrogen, but until then, it's literally taking 2 duplicates running on the wheel 100% of the time just to keep the whole system powered. And look at this. It's a solid stream of hydrogen. Now we can go through the awkward situation of disconnecting this. Because as a reminder, I'm not using the pliers mod. Now this is okay for now, but unfortunately the hydrogen generator is going to be drinking all of the hydrogen until we can get a smart battery into play. We're about halfway through the research for it, but those are minor details. Yes, we may be down to 6,000 calories. Yes, we're burning through all of our hydrogen, but the important thing is we can breathe. We're also going to need to get around to some insulated pipe research, because when the water starts sitting in here, it will freeze in the pipes, considering it's about minus 13 degrees inside this SPOM. The wonderful thing about this setup is it's actually going to give us the ability to free up even more duplicate labor. Remember, you need a way to get rid of the excess hydrogen once we get a smart battery on this, and it only needs to run when that battery is low enough. In that case, we're going to be throwing all the extra hydrogen into this generator, and it's going to be plugged into our primary power spine providing power for the rest of the colony, which is going to keep the duplicants off the wheels just a little bit. Alright, we have a tough decision ahead of us. We have 6,000 calories worth of food. That's not enough to feed half our dupes for one cycle. But the more dupes we have, the more we're going to be able to use this micro musher. Additionally, Turner's not too bad. Yeah, they have decreased strength, so they're not going to be able to carry a lot of equipment right out the gate, but they do have a +5 in ranching, and we're going to need all the ranchers we can get. Plus, having another duplicant right now, once again, would allow us to use the micro musher more. Welcome to the colony. Questionable decision number 7, Doritos P. Eilart is just about finished with smart batteries, and that's going to be the last research we do for a little bit, at least until we get the food situation sorted out, or I start seeing some idle messages. And it looks like once again we need more aluminum. This is my nightmare! We're down to 2,600 calories. We're putting in another micro musher to hopefully get above the curve, and it may be useful to make sure Eric can't do anything else other than cooking errands. I don't want Eric running back and forth getting water. We have enough dupes to be able to do those sort of things. So right now it looks like we have plenty of hydrogen, right? The reason why is because the SPOM is pretty much running flat out. It has to fill up this entire cavity before it'll start slowing down. But once it does slow down, this hydrogen generator would still be drinking all this hydrogen, and that's bad for business. That's the reason we use a wonderful smart battery. Now we're cooking with fire, or maybe hydrogen. The smart battery is connected up and charging. As soon as it gets full enough, it'll stop, and all that excess hydrogen will be fed to this hydrogen generator. And we're going to be able to make this process even better if I can manage to get my hands on more aluminum. We've earned another achievement, and my gas is oxygen not included. And there it is. Cheeky little devs. We earned it because we distributed 1,000 kilos worth of oxygen using gas vents. I mean, because of course we did. Did you ever have any doubts? Next, it's time to start working on some bathrooms. Lady Ruff is getting real tired of plunging the outhouses. Not to mention, we could actually use the excess water. By using a regular lavatory, we're going to be able to get around 6 kilos per duplicant per cycle in excess. And that'll come in handy because this water is only going to last so long. Since we dug down here because of our SPOM, we now have a more visibility of the magma biome and our wonderful carbon dioxide geyser. Thanks, Randy. Now, normally when you start seeing all this uranium, oh my goodness, there's actually rust over here. There should be some bees, but we're running out of room to the left and we're running out of room to the right. And I am pretty sure we're supposed to have bees because we have a radioactive biome. We also have one more geyser here and a geyser here. We need one of them to be the cool slush geyser to sort of counteract the heat coming from this saltwater geyser here. Now eventually, this geyser is going to stifle itself because it's going to fill all the way up with water, and then we'll finally be able to get in there and tame it. But until then, we don't have a renewable source of water. I would like to get in there and grab some of this sedimentary rock. For now, Susan and Susan 2 are just eating dirt. Not a big deal, but it's going to keep increasing the chances that we get sage hatchling eggs. But I think that's probably the way ahead, at least to start with. Right now we have 160 tons of dirt and mountains more where that came from. And so until we can get to all this sedimentary rock and maybe start converting those hatches into stone hatches, dirt's going to have to do. We've completed research on the wonderful automatic dispenser, and this is going to give us a couple of opportunities. First, we need to go grab some ice and snow, specifically out of our SPOM. Right now their temperatures are still holding pretty well, because, well, it's really cold down here. But it's not something you want to wait around and find out that your SPOM has been stifled by a bunch of water. Plus, as we said before, we can use this water. This is a half a ton of water right here, and this is another half a ton. And we don't have to worry about upsetting the balance here in our SPOM because we have these doors off. That way, the duplicants can't run through them, they can only jump up and over them. It was handy while we were building the SPOM because we could run right through. But now we don't want to upset our wonderful equilibrium. Our cycle 18 dupe came up, and I think we have to grab yet another one. It looks like Marie is going to end up being a great mechatronics engineer and just really enjoys doing some art as a hobby on the side. Welcome to duplicant number 8. Gave up. The second purpose for our wonderful automatic dispenser is going to be for our pip eggs. We put a couple of pneumatic doors here so the duplicants are not allowed in. But this way we have a place that automatically drops off all the extra pip eggs. We are taking the extra incubators and lullabying a few of them, And if we get some extras, we'll end up turning them into barbecue. But for right now, we need a way to automatically get rid of the eggs in this stable. In Susan's stable, we're just paying a lot more attention to it. And we will always have one extra incubator that is just ready for another hatchling egg. But this brings up a great point of how we're actually going to set these. This incubator is almost done with its power cycle. And as soon as it is, we're going to click over to this timer sensor and reset it. Almost there. 3, 2, 1. Reset timer. But now we know for sure that these incubators are not going to be on at the same time because they're staggered. And this is how we're going to be able to run so many incubators on our wonderfully limited power spine. In fact, if we had a dedicated power spine just for incubators, considering that 4 of them could run at one time, all still being on 2-strand wire and pulling less than 1,000 watts, it means you could run 32 incubators on one line using this staggered method. Okay, now we're just sort of styling out. Look at us, 22,000 calories, and we've created a wonderful little power plant. Now, it's not ideal to be using some of the refined metal, especially considering we don't have an infinite supply of it. But the benefit here is going to be huge. We're going to be turning these 800-watt hydrogen generators into 1,200 watts, which is going to go a long way to keeping the duplicants off the wheels, which is important until we can get the super sustainability achievement and finally get rid of the wheels. And while it does use aluminum, it only uses 5 kilos to create the microchip that's required for the NG's tune-up. And the better sulfur here gets at machinery, the longer that 5 kilos will last. Right now, we get a 23% bonus on the duration of NG's tune-up. Another hidden benefit of using NG's tune-up on the hydrogen generator for the SPOM, we're going to be using less hydrogen to keep the SPOM going, which means we'll have more hydrogen for the overflow, which again is providing power for the rest of the colony. Okay, apparently I didn't make my trough deep enough. Let's go ahead and extend that a little bit so the duplicants will stop wasting their time. There we go. Now the way this is going to work, anytime there's a pip egg in here, the duplicants will automatically come and drop it through this automatic dispenser. And we're just going to let those pips grow up and then turn into meat. Every once in a while, we'll turn the dispenser to sweep only, get in there, grab the meat that should be sitting in carbon dioxide, and make wonderful barbecue out of it. Every little bit helps. This guy I'm letting roam free, because the more mealwoods they can plant, the more free meal lice we can get. Because we're sitting so well on the power front, I figured we'd make a couple more optimizations around the colony. The first starts with a refrigerator. We're going to set it at 48 kilos, which should be enough to supply the colony with 3 cycles worth of either lice loaf or mush fry. Once the refrigerator has that much mush fry or lice loaf, it'll send a green signal, the NOT gate will turn it to red, and it'll turn off these 2 micro mushers. Now, this is probably not a huge deal, considering just by using the refrigerator, the mush fry lasts 33 cycles. But the last thing we want is some of this very valuable mush fry and lice loaf to end up spoiling. Not to mention, once we start getting some barbecue. I just realized we're missing a few mess tables. Try hard more, Echo! And look at this. Susan the Third is now born. And OG Susan is just a cycle or 2 away from laying their last egg. One of the downsides of that SPOM is the oxygen's coming out at minus 22 degrees. Eventually, this whole area should heat up, but it's gonna be a little while. Speaking of which, I need to make sure none of this ice melts and then leaves our hydrogen generator broken. Now, this won't pose too much of a problem for our hatches because they can live all the way down to minus 30. Thank goodness. The pips, too, can live down to minus 30. But while our duplicants can live down to minus 30, they would be miserable. To highlight the chilly surroundings, it gives them plus 10% stress per cycle. I just caught an egg incubating without its lullaby, so I hit the reset timer, and whenever that happens, I have to go and reset all the other timer sensors so they'll stay in sync. This is why it's important to have plenty of ranchers around to be able to hug all these incubators. But for the problem at hand, because it's only 18 degrees in here, and the only plant we have is a mirth leaf, which requires 20 degrees, we needed to figure out another source of decor, because right now we're only getting the mess hall bonus. Not acceptable. Lucky for us, Gave Up came with aesthetic design. So after a quick bit of research, we can put down a sculpting block. Cycle 21 putting us in a rock and a hard place once again. This Gene here is going to end up being a perfect mechatronics engineer one day, supplying, operating, Their only negative is that they're a plant murderer. The question is, though, do we want 9 duplicates? Yes, it'll give us more labor for the micro mushers, but it also means we're going to be consuming more water and dirt at the same time. We're doing okay with water, but we only have this pool, and a little bit here. I suppose if we do take the dupe now, it means when it is time to go look for more water, we will have the labor to be able to do it. Then again, I really want more ranchers. Not necessarily mechatronics engineers. So I think we're going to go ahead and pass on this printing pod cycle. I have discovered a flaw in my system. We're up to 35,000 mush bars, but poor Eric can't cook them fast enough. By the time Eric's done for the cycle of turning all that mush bar into mush fry, the duplicates just eat it all during the next cycle. I think we're going to leave it at the status quo though. Eric's only going to get better and better at cooking. Right now they have a cuisine of 9, so their cooking speed is plus 45%. I know what the problem was. They weren't wearing the better hat. Now they'll be more motivated. No, don't stop cooking. You don't have to stop that long just to put the hat on. We are ready to convert over to our new bathrooms. Unfortunately, without pliers, it turns into a pain in the butt pretty quickly. The first thing we have to do is load up the bathrooms with fresh water. In order to do this, we're just going to connect it here. And because we don't have an ability to disconnect it, we're just going to wait until it's full and then just deconstruct it. For those you didn't know, right now in the public testing is a disconnect tool that Clay's putting into the game, which is just like pliers. So soon, we'll have it in the base game, and then I won't feel bad for using it. But we'll go ahead and deconstruct this pipe and spill the water everywhere. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. The great thing about it being so cold down here is all the carbon dioxide is just liquefying. So we really don't even need these oxyferns. We just keep freezing the carbon dioxide and we won't have a carbon dioxide problem. With the water flow situated, we can now actually get rid of all the old outhouses and the sinks. We also needed to add a bridge in here for flow control. We just earned another achievement and I'm going to go ahead and guess it's Royal Flush. Look at us, just setting them up and knocking them down. We've also already have 1,600 calories into carnivore. Oh yes. Locavore we're getting a lot closer to, and once we finish it, we can actually start planting some meal waste and get off the mush bars, which will actually save us a lot of dirt. And then finally, for super sustainable, we're going to be here for a long time. We've only generated 6,400 kilojoules out of the required 240,000. As predicted, our SPOM has been shut down, and it's because some of this water has frozen in the pipes right here in this spot, which then caused a tile of ice to appear. We can help mitigate that by getting improved plumbing, which also has the bonus of coming with buffer tanks. Alright, I think we actually have to activate mush bars now. We have some starvation messages. No, don't clap. Just cook. And our bathrooms are now complete. It's a very typical bathroom setup, except what we're doing with all the overflow. We have our clean water here, which supplies the lavatories and the sinks, and then all the dirty water comes out and immediately gets sieved. Sometimes we take an overflow here and feed thimbleweeds or something like that. In this case, we're cleaning it all into regular water. The bridge ensures that the bathrooms always stay full, but any excess gets dropped in here on our oxygen line. And with us running lower and lower on water with every passing cycle, making use of all that clean pee water is gonna come in clutch. Which, water is going to be the subject of the next episode, because if we don't find a renewable source, we're going to be up a creek. Truth be told, it shouldn't be too bad. It'll just be about unlocking these vents, letting it all drain, and then just using a desalinator to, well, desalinate the water so that we can use it for oxygen. Now, as you know, we produce 2 videos a week on this channel, and I'm going to start introducing some other games. There'll always be an episode of this series at least once a week, maybe sometimes more. But as much as we all love this game, let's be honest, while we may be playing it in another 5 years, a lot of people won't. And we need to start appealing to that audience as well. So if you have any suggestions on games you'd like to see being covered on this channel, please let me know in the comments below. Until next time, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.